Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Baisley, Bridges,
Excused.
Buckner, Coleman, Cutter, Danielson, Exum, Fields, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hansen, Hinrichsen,
Excused.
Hawkes Lewis, Kirkmeyer,
Excused.
Kolker, Liston, Lundin, Marchman, Moreno, Mullica, Pelton B, Pelton R, Priola, Rich, Roberts, Rodriguez, Simpson, Smallwood, Sullivan, Van Winkle, Will, Winter, Zenzinger,
Excused.
Mr. President,
Here. Morning roll call is 31 present, 0 absent, 4 excused. We do have a quorum. Will the good senator from Denver please lead us in the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate Journal of Tuesday, April 18th, 2023 be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? The ayes have it. That motion is adopted. Senate Services.
April 19, 2023, correctly printed Senate Bill 287, 288, 289, 290, 291, 292, 293, correctly engrossed Senate Bill 2556, 195, 252, 253, 269, correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 145, 211, 260, 264, and 270, correctly revised House Bill 1068, 1186, and 1232, correctly enrolled Senate Bill 2069, 143, 180, 183, 232, and 250.
Committee reports.
April 18, 2023, the Committee on Finance, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following Senate Bill 280 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. Senate Bill 271 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. Senate Bill 274 be amended as follows, and as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation. Senate Bill 248 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with a recommendation be placed on the consent calendar. Senate Bill 278 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation, and with a recommendation that be placed on the consent calendar.
Third reading of bills. Final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 195?
Senate Bill 195, Senators Winter F. and Will, Representatives Judah and Pugliese, concerning the calculation of contributions toward insured and required cost sharing under a health benefit plan.
I was here.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage on third reading, Senate Bill 195.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 195. Are there any no votes? Senators Rich, Pelton B., Smallwood. Minority Leader Lundin, Gardner, Pelton R., Liston. With a vote of 24 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Senate Bill 195 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Jaquez Lewis, Majority Leader Moreno, Marchman, Priola, Cutter, Buckner. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 25?
Senate Bill 25, Senator Baisley, Representatives Byrd and Soper, concerning the creation of the In God We Trust license plate and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23-025 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 25. Are there any no votes? Senators Hansen, Gonzalez, Sullivan, Danielson, Cutter, Majority Leader Moreno. Jaquez Lewis. With a vote of 24 ayes, 7 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Senate Bill 25 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Pelton B., Will, Pelton R., Van Winkle, Smallwood. Minority Leader Lundin, Liston. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 56?
Senate Bill 56, Senator Coker, Representative Byrd, concerning a requirement that the state make a direct distribution to the Public Employees Retirement Association in addition to a previous additional direct distribution to recompense the association for the cancellation of the July 1st, 2020 direct distribution.
Senator Colker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 2356 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 56. Are there any no votes? Senators Pelton B., Pelton R., Simpson, Minority Leader Lundin, Rich, Hansen. With a vote of 25 ayes, 6 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Senate Bill 56 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Mullica, Jaquez Lewis, Marchman, Cutter, Sullivan, Danielson, Exum, Priola, Buckner. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 253?
Senate Bill 253, Senator Cutter, Representative Froelich and McCormick, concerning standards for products represented as compostable in the state and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Cutter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 23-253 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 253. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Baisley, Rich, Gardner, Minority Leader Lundin, Smallwood, Liston, Pelton B., Pelton R. With a vote of 22 ayes, 9 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Senate Bill 253 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Hansen, Marchman, Jaquez Lewis, Majority Leader Moreno, Gonzalez, Sullivan, Danielson, Priola, Buckner, Winter, Fields. Please add the President. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 269?
Senate Bill 269, Senators Buckner and Rich, Representatives Lukens and Bradfield, concerning creating a bonus payment program to incentivize Colorado preschool providers to participate in the Colorado Universal Preschool Program and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. We move Senate Bill 269, third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 269. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Baisley, Smallwood. With a vote of 28 ayes, 3 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, Senate Bill 269 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Malika, Exum, Roberts, Coleman, Majority Leader Moreno, Jaquez Lewis, Marchman, Priola, Sullivan, Cutter, Winter, Janal. Please add the president. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 252?
Senate Bill 252, Senators Van Winkle and Gonzalez, Representatives Doherty and Hartsock, concerning hospital medical price transparency.
Senator Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of Senate Bill 252 on third reading and request permission to offer a third reading amendment.
That's bold, Senator. Explain the need for the amendment.
It is highly technical. It just simply adds the term "if applicable" on page 10, line 7.
The motion is to allow permission to offer a third reading amendment. Are there any no votes? You know, Majority Leader, I'm in charge. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and permission is granted. Something did feel wrong. I wasn't sure what it was, but it didn't feel quite right. There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read L004?
Amendment L004.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move L004.
To the amendment.
Thank you. Again, as stated, it is technical and adds the words "if applicable" to the bill.
The motion is the adoption of L004 to Senate Bill 252. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 31 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 4 excused, L004 is adopted. To the bill. The motion before the body is Senator Minority Leader Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise to explain my no vote on 252 and encourage those who might choose to join me in that, based on the argument I will make, to join me in that. We all believe that hospital transparency is important. We believe transparency is important everywhere. But it really is important that that important value of transparency be applied in a way that is meaningful and is productive and moves, in fact, the policy desires forward. One of the key policy desires that we have with regard to health care is affordability. Now, part of the way you get to affordability is you let people know what things cost. Transparency is good. And you let them make choices. This particular bill, because of its enforcement mechanism and the fact that 252 layers an additional set of enforcement mechanisms, I don't know whether that would be mechanizi or what the proper form of mechanisms is, but it adds a second additional layer. Last year, you recall, we passed out of here almost unanimously House Bill 1285. Quite frankly, it's a yes vote that I cast that I am quite uncomfortable with now at this point, especially because 252 now is adding another layer of complexity, difficulty, and burden on hospitals whom we expect to help make our health care affordable. This bill, I believe, will over time raise costs, and that is not something we want. How does that happen? Well, 1285 that passed last year creates a private right of action, meaning it turns the enforcement loose to the trial attorneys of Colorado and, quite frankly, people who may have been harmed. Over what? Over whether or not pricing was fully transparent across the board. Think of it this way. If a hospital is not transparent on a $3 procedure, and a trial lawyer can, because of that lack of transparency on the $3 procedure, go file a claim on a $10,000 procedure where there was transparency, why wouldn't, in fact, that tool which has been provided previously be acted upon? And why wouldn't that create burdens and costs that the hospitals then ultimately will either have to absorb and allow their costs broadly to rise up, or quite frankly, why wouldn't that cause them perhaps to not make service available? This law now, comes 252, seeks to add a layer of deceptive trade practices. So now you've got another layer of the law, another entire bucket of the law for trial attorneys to reach into and to pull out punitive actions for financial gain against the hospitals that we expect to serve our communities. This bill adds to that private right of action penalty that already exists in law, and as I acknowledged, a vote I cast that I'm not comfortable with today, and layers on this threat of deceptive trade practices into the equation. Hospitals are concerned and have raised this issue that they are now afraid they will be in constant litigation. They will have to expand their legal department in order to defend against the army of independent trial attorneys who may seek to achieve damages and profits for their law firm on behalf of individuals. I acknowledge that there is a purpose there. Part of the problem is it establishes duplicative and conflicting enforcement schemes. The state law says pay attention to the federal law, but we will also give you state issues that you have to deal with. And it's the potential conflicts and complexities between federal existing transparency laws and state laws now. While the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS for those of you in the healthcare world, is charged with determining compliance and enforcing federal law, this bill, should it pass, requires the Healthcare Policy Finance Department here in Colorado to check hospital compliance and determine if they meet federal law. And they're still not sure how that's exactly going to happen because the state uses a tool to establish compliance that is not CMS, the federal level, certified. So the tool at the state level isn't actually certified to audit the federal compliance requirements that are in place. Further, it goes overboard on penalties, 252, should it pass. Existing state and federal financial penalties prohibit debt collection and expose hospitals to financial penalties and costly litigation. But this bill, Senate Bill 252, adds a third layer of punishment by making non-compliance a deceptive trade practice, which just opens up more layers of the law for the cottage industry of enforcement that trial attorneys have based on 1285 last year and now expanded with this. So had I caught this on second reading, I probably would have given substantially more extended debate. I would have engaged in a discussion around some of the amendments that were added to this bill as it came through that did in fact improve it, but not to the point where I personally feel that a yes vote is warranted. We could have talked about those amendments in some degree of detail, and we could have talked further about the complexities and difficulties that are created, new challenges for hospitals whom we rely on that will, I believe, over time, put cost pressures on healthcare, not create price reductions as the bill would hope to achieve. So I rise in opposition of 252 to express the fact I will give you a no vote and encourage any who may perceive some of the same arguments are compelling to join me in that no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Will the clerk please add Senator Bridges and Kirkmeyer to the roll? Senator Malika.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I had the privilege of hearing this bill in committee and would like to talk about that a little bit and about the bill. We heard from the minority leader just now about policies that we've already passed in this area, and I'll preface anything I say with I believe in hospital transparency, and I believe that we should be doing all that we can to make sure the consumers and our patients have all the information that we can. But when we look at this bill, members, when we look at Senate Bill 252, the language is actually pretty similar to language from 1285 that brought that hospital transparency to fruition last year. What 252, though, does is it brings punitive damages in with deceptive trade practices. And members, let's be clear what deceptive trade practices do. That's $10,000 a day per fine. And what came up in committee and the concern that we heard from multiple members of committee and that was communicated with the sponsors was our concern about rural hospitals. And we know rural hospitals are struggling. We all saw in the news several weeks ago, $1.4 million had to be divvied out to a hospital in Delta, Colorado, because they were struggling to make ends meet. And members, especially members that live in rural Colorado, I think you understand how important those hospitals are to those communities and how they are struggling and how the pandemic has not made life easier, but that the services they provide to those communities are extremely important and they are a central point in those communities. And now what we're looking at 252 is not only making it transparent, making these prices transparent, which is a good thing, which is what we did in 1285. Now we're going to come in and we're going to say, if you don't, we're going to fine you $10,000 a day per instance, when these hospitals are struggling just to make ends meet. It was communicated in a number of closing statements from members of committee to the sponsors that we encourage them to continue working, that we encourage them to find solutions to really make sure that our rural hospitals specifically weren't going to be damaged and weren't going to be put under even more financial pressure than they already are. Unfortunately, we saw no amendments on this bill. And I find that concerning because I think that there was a number of comments and I think there was a huge desire from the committee to make sure that we address that and that we get that taken care of, and it wasn't. Members, I'll be clear, I'm for transparency and we need to have transparency. That's good for the patients, but we also need to make sure that our rural hospitals can continue staying open, can continue operating to provide these services, essential services to many members in our state. And so I'm going to be a no vote. I wish I could be a yes vote because I think there was a possibility to do the work. Unfortunately, the work wasn't done, and I would ask for a no vote as well.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I first of all, and in the interest of time, I endorse the comments of the minority leader and the senator from Thornton. I, too, support transparency in nearly all of its forms. The exception is the Hollywood red carpet. I'm not sure that the transparency there is appropriate, but in transactions and in consumer issues, in citizen issues, transparency is incredibly important. How we get there has been one of the challenges, I think, of all of my sessions for all sorts of transparency, because it seems to me that the tendency in legislating about transparency is to approach them and the remedies for them with a meat cleaver rather than a scalpel. Also, it seems that the tendency is to weaponize the legal process to promote transparency. And that may be appropriate in commercial, the pure commercial transaction. But as the senator from Thornton has noted, this punitive damages and penalties have large implications for rural hospitals and all hospitals. And they're not just commercial hospitals, not just investor hospitals, but public hospitals. One of my guiding lights with respect to healthcare has been about quality, affordability, and availability. And while this transparency should promote affordability, it doesn't help with regard to availability. These are difficult. The federal rules are difficult to implement. It's a frustration to me. I don't, again, my message to the hospital community is you've got to get your arms around this. And I understand the frustration of the bill sponsors, I think, that when is this going to happen and how. Reform doesn't come easy. I've found in medical billing, where I have carried some pretty substantial reform in the out-of-network area, it's very nuanced because, again, you don't want to affect quality and availability when you're ensuring affordability. For that reason, I'm a no vote, but I want to make clear that I appreciate the goals and objectives here. I just don't think this is the solution. Seldom is it a solution to weaponize trial lawyers in the area of medical care, and so I respectfully ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Senator Van Winkle.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few things said here today I think I at least need to address. One, no amendments, that the work wasn't done. That, frankly, is not a fair statement, to say the least. The work was done, and the bill was taken from a 20-page bill down to an 11-page bill, to the point at which even a major organization that represents hospitals in Colorado said that they had no position on this new bill, that they needed to go back and look at it and see if there was objection. It was also said that we are weaponizing trial lawyers with this bill. Trial lawyers are not part of this bill. There is no trial lawyer action whatsoever in this bill. The mechanism is the Attorney General, and to get to that, it would take literally months and months. In fact, to get to that, here's the steps that a hospital would have to take. First, they would have to ignore the federal rules that started taking effect in January of 2021. More than 2 years ago, that hospital would have to be ignoring those rules from January 2021. Then they would be receiving a letter from our state to HCPF. They would receive a letter saying you are out of compliance. Here are the steps that need to be taken to get into compliance. Then HCPF goes to them and says, what technical assistance, how can we as a state government help you get into compliance? We are here to help, not bring a hammer, not bring a scalpel, but to help you get into compliance. And then after several more months has gone by, if there is widespread public harm that is found, then the Attorney General can then start pursuing their course of action, which would again take months. And again, all a hospital has to largely do with this bill is follow the rules that have been in effect for more than 2 years. The bill does not expand upon those rules that passed more than 2 years ago from the federal government. Members, in short, this bill is the key to unlocking clear, accessible, and upfront pricing in healthcare. Members, none of us here would buy a cheeseburger at a restaurant, let alone a car, which is the pricing that we're talking about with healthcare services, without knowing the upfront prices. That is absurd to even the idea of going into a restaurant and just ordering and not knowing what it's going to cost until you get the bill at the end and then you get surprised. That is absurd. Healthcare is the only industry in the world where there is not a free market, there is not a marketplace where you can see price first price, first price. Now, they have gotten dramatically better since the rule passed in 2021, but as we saw on the front page of the Gazette, as we saw in the Denver Post over the weekend, no hospital in the state of Colorado is fully in compliance. That is why we need this bill. We need this bill we need prices posted to help individuals and consumers shop for care, but it also enables employers. It enables local governments. It enables the state government to choose wisely and to choose with the full knowledge of what they're buying, the health plans and coverage that is most appropriate for employees. Members, I urge a yes vote on this bill. It is the key to unlocking clear, accessible, upfront pricing in healthcare.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. So I thought I would share my thoughts with you on Senate Bill 252. Good morning, everyone. You're all looking so well. No better way to start.
Would you like to go
on
into your
Wednesday.
next 10 minutes, Senator Smallwood?
I wish, like anything, I could hear him. But when you're up here, you just can't hear what's going on back there. You're looking well, Mr. President. I didn't mean to leave you out. So, Senate Bill 252 is, it's interesting. And I was going to be a no vote on Senate Bill 252 and had a number of conversations with the junior senator, senior legislator from Douglas County about the amendments. And candidly, it is the amendments that that make this bill something that I'm going to support. I'm going to be a yes vote on Senate Bill 252, but not at all for the reasons why I think most of the proponents think that you might want to be a yes on 252. And I do think that's important because I do not think this is an issue that's going to go away. I think this is an issue that's going to keep coming up, and some of the arguments in favor of this kind of transparency, quite honestly, I don't think are realistic, and I think they're a little bit misguided. And I also do still share some concern around the intensity of the proposed enforcement. I do share those concerns. But to take a step back, hospital costs really are the driver of healthcare costs. I mean, depending on where you are in the country, where you are in the state, you're talking about 40 or 50 cents of the healthcare dollar are coming out of the hospitals. So if we're not going to look at hospital costs, and we're, in my opinion, not really being sincere about looking at healthcare costs, this is the lion's share of healthcare costs. And transparency with no enforcement is useless, as we all know. And so we can argue a little bit about the proper level of enforcement around this, but I do think that there does need to be a heightened level of enforcement. And this bill is still in the first chamber, so maybe there's additional work that can be done on that side. But recognizing that hospital costs are what they are in their piece of the healthcare pie, I do think it's critically important that as much information get out into the public as possible so that action can be taken. What you might have heard from proponents is action that's going to happen when we have this kind of transparency is shopping, like you do for hamburgers, or that you do for, I used the example of auto repair yesterday. And I don't think that's practical. And for those of you who are in the healthcare space, you know that's not practical. You know that you cannot, as a consumer, realistically go to each hospital's website in a 50-mile radius of where you live to shop for, let's say, a the delivery of a child during pregnancy or after pregnancy and look at prices and say, hey, if I drive to Broomfield, I'm going to save $2,000 than if I'm in Castle Rock, so therefore I'm going to drive up to Broomfield, knowing that unlike a hamburger, where you get what you get, it's a hamburger, or a repair to your automobile, where when they get into the details and realize the leak that you brought your vehicle in for actually turned out to be a whole lot more complicated than what you thought it was, right? You thought it was just a loose radiator cap, and instead it turns out you need a whole new radiator. Well, when it's your car, you're gonna probably get a call, I would hope, from the mechanic saying, hey, look, you know what? By the way, this happened to me yesterday. We got into the car and we looked at it and we actually noticed that it's not really what we thought it was, so the estimate that we gave you is now no longer valid because there's more work that needs to be done. Colleagues, when you're in the OR under a general anesthetic, they are not going to wake you up and tell you, like they did with my knee, hey, I would say senator, but they didn't call me senator. We got into your knee and we opened things up and we looked, and what we thought would be a simple meniscus repair is actually a whole lot more than that. You've got severe cartilage damage. The little cleanup that we thought with a couple of weeks of rehab is actually going to turn into a microfracture surgery, and you're going to be, immobilized first, and we're going to do all this kind of rehab. Colleagues, I didn't find out any of that until I woke up and had to cancel all the stuff that I had planned for my summer because my quick 2 to 3 week rehabilitation after meniscus surgery turned into a whole lot more than that, including ruining my entire next year of skiing. That's how healthcare works. They don't wake you up and tell you, oh, it's something different than what we thought. When you go in for your normal vaginal delivery and it turns out that there's complications and you're going to have a kiddo in NICU, they don't tell you, that's not the same as the pricing that you looked at on the website. So what are we going to do? Should we not put your kiddo in NICU because it's going to be a whole lot more expensive than we thought? That is how healthcare works. It is not predictable. In fact, I would argue that more often than not, it's not what you shopped for. More often than not. There's something else that comes up. There's a difficulty, there's a complication. So to launch this assertion that folks can just go shop for this the way they do hamburgers or auto repairs, to me, that's just not accurate. It's not the way the world of healthcare works. That's what I kept hearing from the proponents, is that we need this level of transparency so that consumers can shop for this like they shop on Amazon. So those were reasons for me to consider voting no. Don't really believe that shopping for healthcare the way you shop on Amazon is anywhere close to a reality. And candidly, I don't know that we want it to be a reality like that. I'll explain that why as well. That and the penalties and what seemed like, in a lot of cases, some redundancy between what this bill was proposing and what's already in federal law, and a level of burden that I was concerned would be too much for a lot of the hospitals to bear when we're talking about things like monthly reporting, as if pricing of hospital services changes on a monthly basis, which, quite honestly, I think we can all agree it probably doesn't change enough to matter. But what the amendment did was it struck a lot of that out, and I'll let you read that. as the senator from Douglas County mentioned, it literally like struck almost half the bill and took out almost all of the concerns that I had. But here's another perspective that I want to give you, and why this level of transparency is most likely beneficial, which is not that it will allow consumers to shop for a shoulder replacement the way they shop for something on Amazon, but that once this level of pricing, this granular level of pricing, gets out into the public, it will allow payers, which, as we've discussed ad nauseum here, whether we're talking about Medicaid, the commercial markets, both fully insured and self-funded, it will allow, that is how the vast majority of Coloradans get their health care, through some sort of payer.
Senator Smallwood, would you like to go into your next 10
I
minutes?
would, if I could. Thank you, Mr. President, I appreciate it. The vast majority of Coloradans receive their health care in conjunction with some sort of payer. And that payer, from Medicare through Medicaid, through the commercial markets, are, I think, accountable and responsible for providing some level of discount off of rack rates, non-negotiated rates. And for payer A to look to see what potentially payer B or payer C have struck in deals, I don't think is, by any stretch of the imagination, a violation of some kind of trade secret. I think no different than Kelley Blue Book or something like that. It gives you an idea of what reasonable, rational charges might look like. And I'm not saying the hospital should acquiesce and give everybody the same deal that they give their largest payers, but it does establish that out there as some sort of benchmark, which I'm not confident really exists today. It will also, I think, allow large employers, we've heard from this well, again, probably ad nauseum, the percentage of Coloradans that are covered under self-funded plans, where the employer themselves is responsible for paying the claims. And wouldn't it be beneficial for the employers to know, again, this benchmark of what hospital pricing should look like, and to be able to negotiate the same way maybe a small insurance company, a small payer, a co-op does? So even though I don't think it's reasonable or practical for a patient themselves to go out and shop multiple hospitals on a line-by-line basis to say, I'm going to get this complicated procedure done at hospital A or hospital B, I don't believe that's reasonable, but I do think it's very reasonable for large self-funded employers to look maybe across hospital systems and say hospital system A, generally speaking, looks like it might help us better than hospital system B when it comes to costs. And we've done the analysis and agree that when it comes to quality, mortality, morbidity, readmittance rates, that sort of thing, that it would work for us as well. So I see a lot of value in insurance companies, co-ops, large self-funded employers, perhaps being able to advance their own technology when it comes to shopping tools, treatment cost estimators, and that sort of thing, where without that information, without that data, I just don't see that happening. So I appreciate where the sponsors have tried to thread the needle, I don't know if I should say as best as they could, but certainly in moving things forward between a bill that I was utterly opposed to because of the burdens placed on hospitals, the enforcement mechanism used, the redundancy of the laws, to now something that I really do think would be beneficial for payers, for large self-funded employers, and as they create those tools. By the way, you know it's open enrollment in the state of Colorado. I'm not sure if I mentioned that to you or not. One of the tools that's available to all of you if you're on the state's plan is something called the Healthcare Blue Book. Give a shout out to the HR folks at the state, which provides exactly that, these kind of shopping tools. And shopping tools aren't able to be built. The technology that goes into those systems relies on accurate data being out there in order for you as patients to be able to see what an MRI costs in 5 or 6 different facilities that are close to you. So I do want to commend the bill sponsors on the amendments. I would encourage further work on the enforcement side if that's something that the second chamber also hears as a concern. And for today, I'm going to be a yes vote on Senate Bill 252. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues.
See no further discussion. The motion is the adoption of Senate Bill 252. Are there any no votes? Senators Will, Rich, Minority Leader Lundin, Gardner, Kirkmeyer, Mullica, Roberts. Don't forget to raise your hand, Smallwood, after all of... Oh, you're a yes. I should start listening to you more often. Liston, Pelton B, Pelton R, Simpson. If you just cut to the chase earlier in your speech, I would have... With a vote of 22 ayes, 11 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senate Bill 252 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Rodriguez, Exum, Jaquez Lewis, Majority Leader Moreno, Buckner, Danielson, Priola, Fields, Cutter, Marchman, Hanson, Coleman. Will the clerk, Majority Leader Moreno, will the clerk please read the title to House Bill? Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House Bill 1232 lay over until tomorrow, April 20th.
Motion is to lay over House Bill 1232 until tomorrow. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and 1232 will lay over until tomorrow. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1186?
House Bill 1186, Representatives Lindsay and Judah, Senators Exum and Jaquez Lewis, concerning remote participation in a residential eviction filed in county court and in connection therewith making an appropriation.
Senator Exum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 231186 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1186. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Will, Baisley, Rich, Minority Leader Lundin, Gardner, Smallwood, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Pelton B, Pelton R, Roberts, Janal. With a vote of 20 ayes, 13 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I request I be recorded as a yes vote on 1186.
Senator Gardner will be recorded as a yes vote. With a vote of 21 ayes, 12 noes, 0 absent, 2 excused, House Bill 1186 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Winter, Majority Leader Moreno, Marchman, Fields, Priola, Buckner, Gonzalez, Cutter, Sullivan. Will the clerk please add Senator Zenzinger to the roll? Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1068?
House Bill 1068, Representative Valdez, Senators Winter F. and Hawkins Lewis concerning pet animal ownership and housing and in connection therewith prohibiting restrictions on dog breeds for obtaining homeowners insurance, providing for the manner in which pet animals are handled when a writ of restitution is executed, limiting security deposits and rent for pet animals and excluding pet animals from personal property liens.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for third reading and final passage, House Bill 1068.
Is there any discussion? Minority Leader Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to 1068. Consider the circumstance, colleagues. Tens of thousands of landlords, hundreds of thousands of tenants, complicated circumstances involving individuals' perspectives, individuals' rights, individuals' desires, and property owners who seek to engage in a marketplace and provide value to people and a home to people. And we step in to those millions of transactions and say, we've got a big rule, a big law that we want to apply across it all because we're smarter than those hundreds of thousands of people and tens of thousands of property owners. And we want this to be fundamental to every contract, a requirement that may have nothing to do with the reality of the landlord's circumstance, the tenant's desires, but we're from the government. We're here to help you. I urge your opposition to 1068.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of House Bill 1068. Are there any no votes? Senators Van Winkle, Will, Baisley, Rich, Gardner, Minority Leader Lundin, Smallwood, Liston, Pelton B, Pelton R, Simpson, Kirkmeyer, Zenzinger, Janal. With a vote of 20 ayes, 14 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1068 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Cutter, General orders. Second reading of bills. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of general orders, second reading of bills.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the motion is adopted. The Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of the general orders, second reading of bills, and Senator Marchman will take the chair.
Sorry. The committee will come to order, and the court rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title to HB 11? Minority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee proceed out of order for consideration of House Bill 1235.
The motion before the body is to move out of order. All those in favor? Say aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. Will the clerk please read the title of HB 1235?
House Bill 1235, Representative Serrata, Senator Buckner, concerning technical modifications to the Department of Early Childhood.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 23-1235.
To the bill, Senator Buckner.
Thank you. 1235 is a cleanup to House Bill 1295, which was a bill I was proud to sponsor last year to implement the new universal preschool program and establish the new Department of Early Childhood. That bill brought together early childhood programs from different state departments and consolidated them under this new department in order to better serve children, family, and early childhood professionals. Last year's bill reflected engagement with parents, early childhood professionals, providers, school districts, human services leaders, and others. Given that the original bill was a 500-page bill, it's really impressive that we only have a small number of changes needed in this bill today. House Bill 1235 includes a number of technical fixes and revisions of duplicative language to clarify authority for the new department and its programs, and align with federal requirements and eliminate outdated language. This is a straightforward bill with technical changes, and I am asking you for an aye vote on this really important bill.
Is there any further discussion? Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with all due respect to my colleague, the senator from Aurora, who was introducing the bill, sponsor of the bill, I urge a no vote on this bill, as we should not have been in this situation in the first place, for the reason that the bill that carried last year was inappropriately funded by use of funds from tobacco tax that were a result of ballot measure EE in 2020, but the language there did not allow for funding to go straight to early childhood and universal child care, but rather to go to two other programs first, including discouraging youth from consuming tobacco products. And those were never accomplished before the funding was to then be available to early childhood and universal preschool. So I don't believe that this was done in the first place in concert with the will of the people. I understand this is merely a cleanup to that bill, but that bill should not have passed in the first place, in my humble opinion. So I would urge a no vote with all due respect to my dear colleague from Aurora.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Colleagues heard this bill in Education Committee, and although I support the underlying bill, the underlying effort to get to early childhood education, I support that in consideration of a couple critical elements, one of which is the mixed delivery system. It's the method of all the diversity of different child care providers in homes, in churches, in synagogues, and other places being able to continue to provide their services. I voted against this particular technical bill in committee because I perceive some of these technical changes are grinding against that idea of mixed delivery, and that concerns me. There are changes that give the government side of this greater latitude, longer extended deadlines to behave, and it tightens up, quite frankly, some of the requirements on those mixed delivery providers. So I am putting a stake in the ground. I am saying I personally, and I think others as well, are monitoring what our pre-K education system looks like. It was represented that it would always honor this mixed delivery system. It would always honor that critical intersection where parents are letting slowly go of their children into society. And they want to make sure, those parents, that their children are leaving the home, that they're engaging in society in a way that those parents perceive as most beneficial for their children. After all, it is the right and responsibility of parents, not government, to direct the education and upbringing of their children. And so allowing for this robust breadth of delivery systems, mixed delivery, is critically important. And I believe that here we are with a technical bill beginning to grind against, turn the worm, if you will, against that mixed delivery model. And that is why I have registered a no vote in committee on 1235 and will continue to be a no vote as we move forward. As an acknowledgement, it's critically important in my mind that we not lose the ethic, the design, the represented purpose and presentation method of early childhood education by virtue of slowly but surely giving government a greater, more powerful hand and giving that mixed delivery service provider network a less powerful hand. I urge for those reasons your opposition to 1235, with all due respect.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Senator Buckner.
Thank you. And I appreciate the respect I am received from Senator Baisley and Senator Lundin, even though we might disagree on this particular issue. But this bill, let me reiterate, is making technical changes to Title 26.5 and related statutes. And I am not going to go over all the reasons we need universal pre-K. I am strictly addressing this bill today, which is just making technical changes, language updates to codify law, and make clarifications and seeking authority. And this is a really important bill so we can continue the work that we started with universal pre-K. Thank you. I'm still asking for an aye vote.
The motion before the body is the adoption of HB 1235. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee proceed out of order for consideration of House Bill 1100.
The motion before the body as we move out of order. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Will the clerk please read the title to HB 1100?
House Bill 1100, Representatives Ricks and Garcia, Senators Huckes, Lewis, and Gonzalez, concerning restrictions on governmental participation in civil immigration detention.
To the Judiciary Report, Senator Gonzalez. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1100 and the associated Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you. And to the committee report, Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, I request a no vote on the Judiciary Committee report.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the adoption, the rejection of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the report is lost. They moved the belt, right? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of HB 1100. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and HB 1100 is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until later today.
The motion before the body is to lay over the balance of the calendar to later in the day. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We will lay over the balance of the calendar. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is to rise and report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it.
The Senate will come to order. Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee has met and had a couple of bills under consideration. Will the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1235, House Bill 1100, passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. The balance of the calendar laid over to later in the day.
Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the report.
The motion is the adoption of the committee of the whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, the committee of the whole report is adopted. House Bills 1235 and 1100 passed on second reading in order to revise and place on the calendar for third reading and final passage. House Bills 1190, 1077, 1224, Senate Bill 172, and 200 laid over until April 19th and retaining their place on the calendar. Consideration of resolutions. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Joint Resolution 1021, lay over until Friday, April 21st.
The motion is to lay over House Joint Resolution 1021 to April 21st. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and HJR 1021 will lay over until April 21st.
He's getting it.
Oh, wait, this is conference. Hold on.
I might have it.
Consideration of House amendments to Senate bills. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 4?
Senate Bill 4, Senators Marchman and Hawkes Lewis, Representatives Michelson, Janae, and Young, concerning employment of certain school-based therapists.
Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur with the House amendments to SB 4.
Is there any discussion? Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will say we worked very closely with our school-based special service providers to add a provision that clarifies that we are adding to, not replacing, the current school staff. So,
The motion is that the Senate concur with House amendments to Senate Bill 4. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, the motion is adopted. Senator Hawkes Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 004.
The motion is the repassage of Senate Bill 4. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 4 is repassed. Co-sponsors. Consideration of governor's appointments. Consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all of the appointments listed on the consent calendar?
Members of the Board of Trustees for the Colorado School for the Deaf and Blind for terms expiring July 1st, 2026. Ida Wilding of Colorado Springs, Colorado, to serve as a representative of the deaf community, appointed. Jessica Lee of Colorado Springs, appointed. Alan G. Ward of Poncha Springs, Colorado, reappointed.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of all the appointments listed on the consent calendar, which includes members of the Board of Trustees for the Colorado School for the Deaf and the Blind.
Is there any discussion? The motion is the confirmation of all of the appointments on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the appointments are confirmed. Consideration of governor's appointments. Will the clerk please read the appointment to the College Invest Board of Directors?
Members of the College Invest Board of Directors, effective July 1st, 2022, for terms expiring July 31st, 2026. David Andrew Simon of Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, reappointed. Kirk Mylans of Littleton, Colorado, reappointed. Danielle Schutz of Denver, Colorado, appointed.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of David Andrew Simon, Kirk Mullens, and Danielle Schutz to the Colorado Invest Board of Directors.
Is there any discussion? The motion is Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I was asked for this to not be on the consent calendar, this group in particular, because there was expressed by these candidates the intent to comply with ESG philosophy in investing the people's money when it comes to the College Invest funds. So, which I just thought it was appropriate to bring to the attention of this body that this very agenda-driven investment strategy is being considered by these folks in handling the people's money, which I find to be wholly inappropriate. So while I did vote for this board, I thought, because I believe that the governor ought to have his or her choice of folks with few exceptions, this I thought ought to be brought to the attention of my fellow senators. So thank you, Mr. President.
Minority Leader Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise in support of the confirmation of these individuals to the College Invest Board, but do want to signpost the acknowledgement and kind of echo a few of the comments from the good senator from Teller County, that this question of ESG, environmental sustainability and governance questions, is increasingly intruding into the conversation about what investments look like. Now, College Invest is a fiduciary responsible organization for the individuals who are investing through College Invest. They can put their money in a savings account, they can put their money into a designed portfolio, they can put their money into either non-ESG mutual funds or ESG mutual funds. So College Invest is somewhat insulated from this conversation. But I signpost that this will be increasingly part of, I believe, the dialogue and discussion we will have around the use of state funds, the use of funds and the investment strategies that are applied by PARA, the Colorado Public Employees Retirement Association, and so forth. So, to be clear, my perspective, yes on these individuals. They are the governor's appointments. They did acknowledge that they have a fiduciary responsibility to the individuals who invest through College Invest, and they also did acknowledge, at least one of the members, if not all of the members, an openness. In fact, one was very, very much intentional on advancing the idea of ESG investments. Colleagues, I think we as a body, when we start talking about state money, not individual money like is used through College Invest, but when we start talking about state money, we need to be prepared to have a meaningful conversation around ESG and whether it's appropriate or not. Why? Because it's an ascending issue across the United States of America. Last week, 2 states actually passed laws that said, in this state, you may not invest in ESG-oriented funds with state dollars. Not saying that we're in a position to do that, not saying that that would be the right answer, although I think it's an interesting conversation, simply signposting that we are on the frontier of an important conversation around these matters. Thank you, Mr. President.
The motion is the confirmation of the governor's appointments to the College Invest Board of Directors. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the appointments are confirmed. Consideration of conference committee reports. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Bill 241?
Senate Bill 241, Senators Bridges and Kirkmeyer, Representatives Byrd and Bockenfield, concerning the creation of the Office of School Safety and in connection therewith requiring the Director of the Office of School Safety to appoint a grants manager, creating a crisis response unit within the Office of School Safety, specifying that the Office of School Safety has oversight over the School Safety Resource Center, specifying that the School Access for Emergency Response Grant Program is administered by the Office of School Safety, creating a Youth Violence Grant Program administered by the office, and making an appropriation.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the consideration of conference committee reports on Senate Bill 241 layover until later today.
Motion is to lay over the consideration of the conference report of Senate Bill 241 until later today. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it, and that consideration will lay over. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 90?
Senate Bill 90, Senator Gardner, Representative Snyder, concerning the enactment of the 2022 amendments to the Uniform Commercial Code.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate adopt the first report of the first conference committee on Senate Bill 23-090.
Is there any discussion? Senator Gardner.
Thank you. Members, this is the UCC amendments bill dealing with digital assets and digital currency. Recall that there were a couple of provisions that were a good deal more controversial than the rest of the bill was, and it just was not worthwhile to leave them there. They were regarding what a central bank digital currency is and what electronic money is. Even though I heard this morning that the treasurer for the state of Colorado is accepting Bitcoin in payment of your taxes, but nevertheless, I ask for approval of the conference committee report.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion is the adoption of the first report of the first conference committee on Senate Bill 90. Are there any no votes?
Yes, we do.
With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the first report of the first conference committee on Senate Bill 90 is adopted. Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 23-90.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 90. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 90 is repassed. Co-sponsors.
She gave me the wrong thing. It says second.
Yes, it's
It's the
first.
first report of the first conference.
Will the clerk
Not
please
the
read the
second
title
report
to
of
Senate Bill
the first.
241?
Senate Bill 241, Senators Bridges and Kirkmeyer, Representatives Byrd and Bockenfield, concerning the creation of the Office of School Safety and in connection therewith requiring the Director of the Office of School Safety to appoint a grants manager, creating a crisis response unit within the Office of School Safety, specifying that the Office of School Safety has oversight over the School Safety Resource Center, specifying that the School Access for Emergency Response Grant Program is administered by the Office of School Safety, creating a Youth Violence Grant Program administered by the office, and making an appropriation.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate adopt the first report of the first conference committee on this Senate bill.
Is there any discussion? Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to let everyone know that your JBC Senator members worked very hard to ensure that we kept our amendment of the additional $10 million to go to the school security disbursement grant in the legislation, and then the House added on an additional $1 million for youth violence grants. So we ended up with even more money for school safety, so it's a good thing.
Senator Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. President. And because that part was added over in the House, just briefly, that is a $1 million program that is designed to give immediate support to schools that are in need of that immediate support in $100,000 grants. So, for instance, given what's been happening at East, that would be a prime candidate for one of these $100,000 very rapid grants from this program. And again, folks, thank you for the work that you put into this bill. The conference committee really has respected the wishes of this chamber and only added to it from what came over from the House.
The motion is for the adoption of the first report of the first conference committee on Senate Bill 241. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, the first report of the first conference committee on Senate Bill 241 is adopted. Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the repassage of Senate Bill 241.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the motion is for the repassage of Senate Bill 241. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 241 is repassed. Co-sponsors, Senators Sullivan, if you're on it, you're on it. If you request and I call on you, it actually deletes your name. It's just how it works, guys. I don't know. Signing of bills.
April 19, 2023, the President has signed Senate Bill 83, 168, 169, 170, 219, 228, and 229.
Committee reports.
April 18, 2023, the Committee on Local Government and Housing, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 277 be amended as follows, and as so amended, be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. April 18, 2023. Mr. President, the Committee on Local Government and Housing has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Member of the Board of Real Estate Appraisers for a term expiring July 1st, 2024, Clinton Taylor of Lakewood, Colorado, to serve as a representative of real estate appraisers with experience in appraisal management occasioned by the resignation of Chris Andrew Brownlee of Grand Junction, Colorado, appointed April 18, 2023. Mr. President, the Committee on Local Government and Housing has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirmed. Members of the State Housing Board for terms expiring January 31st, 2027. Monique Terpstra of Mac, Colorado, to serve as a member of an advocacy group for persons with disabilities, member of the 3rd Congressional District, and as a member of the No Labels political party, appointed. Nancy Jackson, PhD of Aurora, Colorado, to serve as a member of the 6th Congressional District and as a member of the Democratic political party, appointed. April 18, 2023, Mr. President, the Committee on Local Government and Housing has had under consideration and has had a hearing on the following appointments and recommends that the appointments be placed on the consent calendar and confirm. Member of the Board of Mortgage Loan Originators for a term expiring August 10, 2027, Aaron Saladay of Colorado Springs, Colorado, to serve as a mortgage loan originator, appointed.
Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the Senate Judiciary Committee will be meeting today promptly at 1:30 p.m. However, guess what? We get to get a new change of scenery because we will not be meeting in the old Supreme Court. We will be meeting in Senate Committee Room 354. We will be hearing the following policies: 1019, HCR 1001, 1205, 282, and 1192. I look forward to seeing you all promptly at 1:30. Thank you.
Senator Mullica.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, Senate Bill 290, Natural Medicine Regulation and Legalization, and Senate Bill 291, Utility Regulation, will be added to the calendar for Thursday's Finance Committee.
Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, we will meet at 11 a.m. up in 352. We have one bill on our calendar, Senate Bill 285. See you at 11.
Senator Fields.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. Members of the Health and Human Services Committee, we're going to be laying over House Bill 1236 today in Health and Human Services. We are meeting upon adjournment today, and we will be meeting in about 15 minutes, so that will be 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Senator Exum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Colleagues, yesterday, April 18th, I missed a birthday. It was national recording artist Tony Exum Jr. turned 48. So how old does that make me? Let you guess. Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if I could get your attention, I'll just describe the procedure for the rest of the day. So we will be going to, upon adjournment, committees now. Afternoon committees will meet as scheduled. After those finish up, we will be coming back to the floor to finish out the second reading calendar. So we will try to keep you updated about the time of that, but just a heads up that we will be coming back after those afternoon committees finish up. With that, Mr. President, I move that the Senate recess until 11 a.m. today. Colleagues, again, you do not need to return at 11. We may have some committee reports or bills to read across the desk, so that just preserves our ability to do that. But we will be coming back this evening after the committees finish up.
In members, the secretary has informed me that she will be ordering dinner for everybody for this evening. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I withdraw the motion to recess for one more announcement.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. Transportation and Energy. We will be laying over House Bill 1216. That will be laid over until Monday. So House Bill 1216 is going to be laid over. We will be hearing House Bill 1217, House Bill 1233, and House Bill 1234. I look forward to seeing you this afternoon.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate recess until 11 a.m. today.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it, and the Senate will recess until 11 a.m. today.